investors, getting to know the maximum range of information at the earliest is key for profitability. Today, I'm going to show you guys information which I personally haven't seen anyone else talking in this space. Chances are that we may not actually see a central bank digital currency in the form we are expecting. Instead, we may actually see a synthetic central bank digital currency. Now, I'll explain through what it is, what it means, and what are the benefits for XRP holders in that particular aspect. Now, this is Bank of England website, and all these questions arise in my mind after reading this. The bank has not yet made a decision on whether to introduce central bank digital currency and intends to engage widely with stakeholders on the benefits, risks, practicalities of doing so. And in the figure, if you can understand, this side is issued by the Bank of England and this side is digital money, right? And CBDC is currently shown in between. So here it's the bank assets, bank notes or bank reserves. Here it's bank deposit, e-money and all, but the central bank digital currency is coming in between. So that kind of made me scratch my head and ask many different questions, which actually led to different kind of documents, different kind of articles. This is another report from the Bank of England, speech. And when we go through that, it's a lot of information, but there are some key aspects which we really need to know. I've actually pointed those out and we'll actually connect those dots together. So this is the IMF's report, and if we actually go through that, we can actually see a money metrics, and the key aspects here are central bank issued, one thing, legal tender, another thing, and currently everything is optional here. If you see for synthetic CBDC, assets backed by stable coins, payment of crypto assets such as BTC, everything is there. Now if you actually look here, it's fiat pegged for stable coin. And for synthetic CBDCs too, but stable coins are not backed by central banks, but synthetic CBDCs are, and it can be a legal tender. Now it is also peer-to-peer, it is programmable, so it has all the other factors of CBDC, retail CBDC, but it's not issued by a central bank. Now why we are looking at that? As we go down, we can actually see there are countries which actually were looking onto this, and as we can see, New Zealand actually worked on this and it is currently on hold, whereas Korea, another advanced economy, has tested this and rejected, that is CBDC. So as you go down in this article, what you actually get is there is a lot of advantage for central bank digital currency, but the regulation and all the different aspects, including the connecting these banks itself, commercial banks, there are some issues. But regulation and where possible, synthetic CBDC and fast payment solutions could offer compelling alternatives to central bank digital currencies. So when you actually come back to this one and understand that synthetic CBDC is something backed by the central bank and not issued by the central bank, it can be a bit of confusion. But when you actually come to another article, this report is from also Bank of England, and when you read this, over the last few decades, the same shift from public to private money has happened for transactional money. The shift is accelerating and potentially new forms of private money are on the horizon. So for them, they actually foresee that the private money, like, say for example, BTC or any other privately issued coins are there. So they actually don't want to lose the entire control. So the central banks and other actors internationally are also addressing the important and related questions of how these technological opportunities could be used to improve systems for transferring money. So they are actually looking at points which they can act on and improve. So in this article, when you actually come to the bottom, you can actually see this case. This is alternatives to full CBDC, and here also they are talking about synthetic central bank digital currency or SCBDC. If you guys recognize value from this video, please do like, subscribe and press the bell notification icon. So as we just saw there, when I was thinking about the central bank digital currencies, it is actually fully backed with central bank reserves. So we just saw in this one, it is central bank backed, but this one gives a bit more clarity. Central bank, a synthetic central bank digital currency in which the private sector issues coins fully backed with central bank reserves. It seems he's not talking about, Zhang is not talking about something like utility settlement coin. Now we can actually take that out. USC, we can take that out, which will be backed by commercial bank deposit at central bank, meaning the deposits of some of the commercial banks at the central banks are used to issue utility settlement coin. Whereas this one will not be like that. This will be backed on entire central bank reserves. So continue reading. It means central bank reserves would support the synthetic central bank digital currency. So if you actually keep an eye on that, coming back to this one, you can actually understand that it is pegged to fiat, it is pegged to central bank. So that means the central bank reserves. So just looking at the Fed as of now, you can see the Fed is printing the fiat or digital fiat like they have diarrhea. So there's a lot of money being created and they are buying the entire US as much as possible. So the value of US dollar now is so much. So if you actually look at the same for all the different central banks across the world, it is happening similarly. Everyone is printing as much as possible to avoid this crisis. But if you actually look at that and think about a central bank digital currency in a synthetic way, which is backed by the central bank reserves, and it should be having all the other aspects of a central bank digital currency, then it should be scalable to that extent, meaning this should be not be able to accommodate only one country, right? They should be looking at the international arena. So in that aspect, Ripple, the company, is actually working with, as we know, 40 to 50 central banks around the world, and they have set aside escrow. Now that is not only my doubt. When we actually play this audio, you will actually get a bit more clarity about that.
I think they've got like 50% of the coins are in escrow, and I think those are already been, allocated to one of these big institutions that will control this thing. And I don't know how they'll figure it out. Somehow gold is tied into it, whether it's based on a country's GDP or natural resources or something.
So the couple of points which kind of resonates with what we just talked is that the escrowed amount of XRP can be, or should be, or could be, we don't know, allocated towards central banks. That is first. And the second thing is, if one country is actually using this as a legal tender, that is here you can see the legal tender as optional. If one country is using this as a legal tender, a digital asset, which can be a synthetic CBDC for one country, then the IMF can actually use that as SDR in their reserves too. Currently, as we know, the payments landscape entirely is changing, and with the same aspect, when you move on to that, we can actually understand different countries are actually changing their payment landscape, trying to avoid the private forms of money creation. And you can actually see this in the Bank of England report. If you go to their website, you can actually see that. So they are actually avoiding the risk of new forms of private money creation, including Bitcoin and others. So they are trying to be digital. They are trying to come into a new payment landscape, but they are addressing all the consequences of declining cash. So once central banks are adopting this, what the framework which they have for the central bank digital currency, not the synthetic one, is something like this. They have the APIs, they have the payment interface providers there, and then the users. So if you are looking at synthetic central bank digital currency, I couldn't get the framework for that, but I assume that majority would be like this. Just one difference, as we saw here. We saw here that it is not central bank issued. So at the top, it would be different. But as we go down, you have everything similar. That it would be a legal tender, central bank backed, fiat pegged, and all. So when we come back into this, you can just take out this and think central bank ledger will be there, but the issuance will not be there. It will be backed by central bank, but you will be having something above that. So in that aspect, if you remember one of our previous videos in which we talked about this, Ripple's escrow amount, or Ripple becoming world's central bank, meaning the central bank of central banks. We didn't have all these information at that time, but based on the information which we had that time, we were trying to come to a conclusion what is possible, the probabilities which may arise in the future. And currently with the new information as well, I'm kind of concreting that this can be the layout. If, for example, the central banks are here, you can see the same here. And as we discussed in this report of IMF, it is not issued by the central banks, it is issued by someone else. So it is above there. Issuer is above there. So if you look at this one, you get the issuer here. And then it is backed by the central bank reserves. And now, yeah, there will be talk about gold. As we just listened to this one, we just hope that it can be backed by gold, everything can be included. But even in that discussion, they were actually talking, they don't know how these are all included, but gold is there. So if you come back here, you can see the central bank backed, and when you come back to this report, you can actually see central bank reserves. So within the central bank reserves, you will have the gold there, you will have all the balance sheets which are currently there. So whatever is there as a reserve for central banks will be in this. So connection to gold is kind of clear in that aspect, right? So looking at this again, this can be a chance where all the central banks are monitored by one institution. Now, I'm not going into a conspiracy, but looking at all the actions by the BIS, IMF, World Bank, and the different central banks in this, I really feel like, maybe it's just my thought or just a conspiracy, but this is a possibility. Even in any case, as an XRP holder, this is really promising for us, because this is not only something what we see, right? When we actually move ahead, we get a lot more information. In this tweet from Marcus, he's actually pointing out something is there with the traditional or legacy standards. They are not coming into the ISO. When you go through that Finextra tweet, you can understand that they are kind of delaying this. They are looking at another 2 years to get onto this adoption. And Marcus Treacher is saying, like, big networks, legacy standards, it is actually hard to do this, whereas we built our system based on the latest standard. Now, when you actually move ahead, tweet from XRP Yo-Yo, you'll get more information from the Swift side, what they are trying to establish, what they are trying to illustrate. And don't think it's not important, because currently Swift has like 11,000 financial institutions in their network. So it is actually important to know how they are pointing towards the next step. Are they actually going to take up the new technologies? Are they actually going to adopt something, a settlement mechanism for their institutions? Currently, that is just a messaging system. So in that framework, if you can include or incorporate some technology which can do the settlement, which can provide liquidity, that's crazy, right?
Payments frictionless, etc. But next to the regulation from a couple of years, we had the last, I think, 24 months, a lot of instant payment systems coming, both domestically as at a pan-European level with RT1 from EBA clearing and TIPS from the Euro system. But now looking at the future, actually the RTGS systems in Europe will modernize. And what does that mean? That means that, of course, they will be using new technologies, but also they will give extra services to the banks, such as extended opening hours, a different way of managing liquidity, especially the Euro system one, where they will manage liquidity across the different target services, whether it's TIPS, the instant payment system, T2S, so Target 2 for securities, or Target 2, the RTGS system. Banks will be able to manage the liquidity.
So in this one, she actually talked about banks, commercial banks, getting new technologies in for the payments and managing their liquidity in a different way. So the liquidity management with new technologies is actually happening in the background.
In a very different way, much more cost effective. So many different services. And then, of course, that will include also the migration to ISO 20022, which is critical for the banks to reduce the costs, to also guarantee much more interoperability. And I think all of that was ISO. Instant payments is ISO, so you can see that interoperability within Europe and within all those systems should be able to be acquired in the next couple of years, and this is all in the benefit.
So they are looking at the interoperability, new technologies and liquidity management, but from Swift side, they're actually looking the same thing in couple of years, meaning they'll take at least 1 to 2 years to do this, a minimum. And at the same time, it is being called out by Ripple executives that we are here, we are ready to go, just put in the bullet and shoot. So that will kind of, hit the regulators, corporate giants who are actually looking at this. Because at the same time, do remember, this is happening. The central bank digital currencies, either as a retail form or in a synthetic form, is actually coming. And the chances are increasingly pointing towards synthetic CBDC. Now, as you go down within this one, you just saw that Korea has rejected the central bank digital currency. So maybe the Bank of Korea won't be issuing central bank digital currency. Instead, someone else will be doing that. Why? Because here in this one, there is no universal case for CBDC. Instead, you get many alternatives using a synthetic central bank digital currency. So when you go through this article, you can actually see, if using a central bank digital currency, what mechanism can be utilized. So the same mechanism can be utilized for synthetic CBDC as well. Just the difference will be that the tokens will not be issued by the central banks itself, whereas all the other areas will be same. Say the distribution, infrastructure providers, merchants, consumers, everyone will be there. Just the issuance is not or will not be from central banks. Instead, you will have someone else here in the synthetic form. And why they actually doing that? In this one, they're actually talking clearly. The monetary system is the backbone of the financial system. So before we open up patient for major surgery, we need to understand the full consequences of what we are doing. So at the same time, keep in mind what they are talking about here, which may require it to purchase additional assets which could interfere with key markets functioning or drying up liquidity. So the liquidity management is a highlight for everyone. This is from Bank of International Settlement actually. So when they're actually talking about the central bank digital currency could lead to a larger central bank balance sheet, yes, it is true, because when we just talked about this, the central bank backed and the central bank reserves, we already talked, they are actually printing a lot of money. They're buying a lot of assets. It is in the form of gold. It is in the form of real estate. It is in the form of ETFs and everything they are buying up. So the current central bank balance sheet is so huge. And if you are actually coming up with a central bank digital currency in a synthetic form issued by someone else, then it should be backed by gold. It should be backed by central bank reserves for central banks, right? So in that aspect, you need a lot of that tokens to back it up. And who has that much of tokens? As of now, as far as I have the information, I don't see anyone else having more assets, which is scalable, which is frictionless, and which is already fully regulated and having working ties with the central banks, with Bank of International Settlements, IMF, World Bank, UN, and everywhere. So I am actually increasing my holdings in XRP. I know this is happening at a time when at the forefront information is being shown that institutions are buying a lot of Bitcoin. I see it like a diversion. Personally, I see all these as noise, which is kind of trying to take out the actual thing which is happening in the background. Or this is another side where the private money is trying to take over. Both of that aspect is there, right? We just went through these government documents and we just saw that they actually eyeing this. The private money can be coming and the acceleration towards that direction is increasing. But against that backdrop, does technology offer us chance to shift that balance back towards state money? Should we take it or not is up to central banks. And that is the aspect which we just discussed here. They are using the technology to take back the control towards central bank backed assets. If you guys recognize value from this video, please do like, subscribe and press the bell notification icon.